Coming up on this episode of the Entrepreneurial You.
What are those small steps that you can take that you could just push yourself and face those little fears? And sometimes they feel so big, but do it anyways. And you'll see what you're capable of. If you're ever looking at someone and thinking something's missing inside you, go find it in your own form so you have that confidence and certainty within to go express it on the outside. It'll make your life a lot easier.
Hey, it's John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and it's the Entrepreneurial You, the show for dedicated and passionate Caribbean entrepreneurs seeking daily inspiration, brought to you by author, speaker, and award-winning entrepreneur Heneka Watkis-Porter. You must be prepared to ignite.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial You. It is where we explore the real drivers of business and personal growth. I'm your host, Heneka Watkis-Porter. Today's guest brings a fresh, science-backed perspective on leadership and scaling business. Meet Carly Pepin, international speaker, consultant, and expert in human behavior and strategic growth. Her global work centers on a powerful truth. No matter where you start, your internal narrative shapes your reality. Oh, isn't that the reality? She's helped leaders and organizations around the world break through old patterns, reframe perceived flaws, and design lives and businesses that are both fulfilling and wildly successful. So if you're ready to move from obligation to authentic achievement, then this episode is absolutely for you. Welcome, Carly. Such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome sauce. And I will just share with my amazing community of peak performers that today's topic is centered around rewriting your story, human behavior as the key to leadership and growth. And we choose this topic against the backdrop that every leader and entrepreneur face challenges rooted in their own self-perception. And my guest today, Carly, her mission is to show that by understanding and reinterpreting these stories, absolutely anyone can unlock new levels of fulfillment and performance. So today we're going to just dive right into how behavior principles can be applied to strategic business processes and why your mindset is the ultimate growth tool. And we've been talking a lot about mindset on this podcast recently as it relates to entrepreneurship. So that's why we're having Carly as well this week. So Carly, your icebreaker question. You've worked with people from all walks of life. What's one universal myth about success or self-worth you wish you could bust for everyone?
Yeah, the myth about success is that success is like a thing. It's something that we can never really achieve, If we look at business and entrepreneurship, you'll have moments where you have small successes, you'll have little successes, but you're not ever going to be able to get to some end goal and end point. It's almost like we've made it like this end goal. And then once we get there, everything's going to be different and everything's going to be easier. Everything will be different. But the reality is then you'll just be ready to move on to the next thing, the next challenge, which will be harder and bigger because you've kind of graduated. And so it's funny when people think they reach success, like things will get easier. It actually gets harder because you're now able to take on and manage more complicated, more complex, greater projects, greater things. And that does get more challenging, but it's also more inspiring because it took you a really long time to get there, and now you can manage it and handle it to a greater degree where maybe 10 years ago you couldn't even touch what you're touching today, and in 10 years you won't be able to touch that thing. And so it's like, what really is success? Success is more the journey, how you experience it, and just these little milestones, as opposed to when I get here, this will be easier. Some will be easier, but you're definitely gonna have some new hard stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what you're saying to me, and you are now, and the work that you're doing is rooted a lot in self-awareness and, self introspection, all of these things. When did you become self-aware? And I ask this question against the backdrop that we're not necessarily born that way. We're kind of blinded by, sometimes just moving along, just going along. And very often, we're not taught how to self-introspect, and how to, to just look at how we're showing up. So this for you, when did that become a thing?
Yeah, it's been a thing for a really long time for me, very long time. I will say, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. We'll have an experience even as a kid, and we'll start to ask ourselves question on the inside where it's like, why is this happening? I don't understand. Why do I feel this way? Right? It's kind of the first moments we begin to start to have introspection. And we live in a world with like this digital age between the internet and AI. It's kind of quite fascinating where we actually have more access to the answers than we did before. They may not always apply to us, they may not always be accurate, right? But there's a level of research and deep dive, and we can take that thinking to the next level in a sense. Before we relied on the libraries and the books and kind of finding it in a specific way.
Encyclopedias, you remember those?
Encyclopedias, yeah. And like trying to find who it is, where now it's like AI can like we delegate to AI and say, this is what I'm looking for. Like help me find the people and review all these things and let's see which one's the best fit for me, right? And I can have actually have AI do that as an assistant instead of spending like, months in a library, right? So there's things that have really sped up with our modern age. And it's cool because we can now take those questions that we've asked, where why am I feeling this way? What's going on with me? And start to get some really quality answers to it. And that really is like when we think about the first levels of introspection, it's like really starting to question what we're experiencing, what we're feeling. And we start to make comparisons because we wonder, it's like, why do some people feel this way and I feel this way? Like, is there something wrong with me? Right? We ask those questions about ourselves a lot when in reality, it's just our mind trying to extrapolate, like, how do I create that experience? Because they seem pretty relaxed, even though I'm kind of stressed out, right? Like, how do I create that experience? And so when we think about self-awareness as well, I like to say, like, we still ask those questions, but instead of what's wrong with me, right? It's like, well, what's different in my perception that would drive me to have this experience versus maybe this person who's having a different experience? And I'm like, I wonder what I can shift and I wonder what I can change. So our self reflection, our introspection, and our awareness starts to change by changing the quality of our questions, where it becomes almost less judgmental. Like it starts out pretty judgmental when we're young because we don't understand it to a greater degree. And then you're almost becoming like your best friend in a sense, your own coach, and asking yourself better questions, more quality questions to find the answers and understand the purpose behind things instead of just like, what's wrong with me? It's like, yeah, what did happen? Yeah.
Interesting. And it's interesting, the more we mature, the more we recognize that everything in life really starts with asking a better question. Sometimes it's the judgment is what holds us back and enslaves us, right? But being able to ask better questions, of course, we are going to get better answers naturally.
Absolutely. And it's cool because when you start to ask yourself those questions too, something that I've realized, I have multiple coaches in different areas and stuff. I'll ask myself questions when I'm stuck or feeling challenged or something. And if I can't get through it on my own, I'll sit and I'll look and I'll keep asking myself questions to figure out what's going on. I'm like, all right, who's the best fit to help me? Right. And then we can be more refined even on the help that we're seeking on the outside, because sometimes we'll just dive in because someone like promise you the world, but the reality is nobody has the answer for everything. There's not one person on this planet that can solve every problem for sure. But if you know exactly what you're looking for because you've done that introspection and you've asked those quality questions, you can really refine and see, like, is this the person the best fit for me? And sometimes you'll be like, yeah, 100%. This is exactly what I want. It's exactly what I'm looking to solve. And other times you're like, we're kind of close, but we're not there yet. Like, I feel like this is the thing that's missing and I'm going to go find that.
Your story is interesting. And if you're familiar with the Bible, in terms of the gospel, right? The Matthew, the Mark, the Luke, and the John, when we hear the stories that they are telling the same story in those gospels, but they are telling them in totally different way from their perspective. I mean, whatever the main truth is, that holds, but the telling of the story from different perspective and so on, because of who they are and their own experiences and how they relate to the story. Now, how does the story that you tell yourself, I tell myself, everybody tells themselves, how does that story impact how we show up in our leadership, in our personal development, whether or not we're stuck or we're growing?
Yes. So this is a really quite fascinating dynamic because if we're holding on to a very specific story about who we are and how we are, we play that out in life, right? We create situations, we are comfortable in situations that reflect that story back to us, right? So even an individual I was working with who had a story that they were damaged and they were broken, right? They keep creating these situations that are reflecting that they're damaged and broken. But when I go and I dive in and I kept looking, I was like, well, why couldn't you do this? Like, and then it's like, well, what do you mean? It's because there's something wrong, there's something going on. And then they keep looking for something that's going on. When in reality, it's like, okay, but did you take step A, B, and C that we talked about? Because these were the action steps to take. And they're like, well, no, I didn't because there's something wrong. And I'm like, well, what actually, like, let's look, is there really anything wrong? Is there anything that would have prevented you from moving forward except for this thought that there's something wrong? And then you see them look and they're like, no, I could have done it. And it's like, okay, you are so convinced of this story that there's something wrong with you, that you've spent more time. Every time you try to do something, you're immediately going into the story that something's wrong with you, and you're investing more time in looking for what's wrong instead of realizing you just take one step forward and you're totally fine. And it was really cool because as we started to shift that story, they just started taking one step, moving forward one step at a time, and everything's fine. Nothing's wrong with them. They're fully capable, fully capable, very empowered human being, very intelligent, very smart. And it's like, all right, now we're moving, now we're grooving, you know? And so this is where those stories can really lock us in place. And I don't know what the story is with you or anyone else on this planet who's listening, right? And it's like, what is that story that you've convinced yourself of for so long that every time you try to move forward, it's almost like you keep going back into that story, you take the focus away from the movement, and as a result, you don't realize that the stories are also smashed in the movement. Like we can definitely do personal development, and I do personal development for the things that, we're really stuck on, for sure. But I'm a big believer and like just big supporter of also just take a step. Take a step and let me know how it goes. Because if you take that step, you're going to realize that you're way further ahead than you think you are, and I can actually get to deeper, more effective work with you. Like, I don't need to sit here and convince you to take that small step. I'm just going to push you to take that small step. I'll hold you accountable, and then we'll get the deeper work, which is going to be way more bang for your buck, you know? And so when you think about this, even in your real life, it's like, what are those small steps that you can take that you could just push yourself and like face those little fears? And sometimes they feel so big, but do it anyways. And then just get the deeper work done, whether it be personal development or strategy or anything that you want to work on with your coach or your mentor, whatever you like to study or whoever you like to learn with, right? Like you can focus on the deeper stuff with them and you can make a lot of progress that way. And you'll see what you're capable of just by taking those little steps. Our stories really hold us back.
Mm-hmm. So what are some common flawed narratives that you're seeing that are holding leaders and their teams back?
Yeah, that there's something missing inside them, that they don't have what it takes. And we see this at all scales and all levels. I was just watching, was a teacher at Harvard and he was meeting with a owner. And it was ironic because they were doing like an interview on some of the work he helped him with. It was really quite fascinating. And it was funny because the Harvard teacher was like, I admire you so much. He goes, it's just so amazing what you've done. And he sounds like a fan, right? You're listening, you're like, wow, you sound like a real fan of this guy, right? But then the business owner says to him, oh, I admire you so much. He goes, our business wouldn't be where it is today without you. And I'm like, oh, we work together. I was like, oh, I was like, this is so funny to hear this because both of them perceive that the other person is better than the other. They've both put the other person on a pedestal to a certain degree, themselves in a pit. They had a beautiful relationship and things still worked out. But it's to remember nothing's actually missing. They are both stuck in imposter syndrome with each other in that relationship at a very high level, right? And it's fun to watch because we forget sometimes that everyone at every level has imposter syndrome. We have it all the time. And when you listen to people, they'll share it because they're like, oh, I'll never be like, you might hear like a famous singer say, I'll never be as good as Madonna or something. She's my idol, right? Like stuff like that. And you'll hear it. That's the imposter syndrome coming in. It's our comparisons, our judgments that we say this person has something that we don't. And that is actually a disowned part in ourselves. That's the thing that we haven't identified and seen in our own form yet. Everything you have seen on the outside, we have on the inside. We just don't have it in the exact same form as that individual. We have it in a different form, right? So if I go out and I look at an athlete and I say, I admire an athlete, right? I'll look at why I admire them. And it's like, okay, well, I admire that every day they wake up and they're just dedicated to their body because it's so important to them. It's their vision, right? And it's like, I'm not dedicated to that degree to my physical body like an athlete, but I can look and see what I am dedicated to every day. What am I treating like they treat their bodies, right? I treat my vision. I treat my vision, right? My business, the purpose that I have within that. I spend every day trying to figure that out, trying to work it out. I love my family. It's something that I'm highly invested in. I am just as focused as they are, but I'm just directing it towards my life purpose and not theirs. They're no better than me. They're no worse than me. We are equals. We're just displaying things in different forms. And so imposter syndrome comes in when we can't see that. And you'll find yourself saying, I should do this, I should do that, because we've subordinated to an outside perspective that this other person's better than us. So you're like, well, I should do this. I need to do that. I have to do that. As opposed to being like, I'm already doing this in my form. Like, where am I doing it and how? And then asking yourself the question, do I actually want to do stuff that way? And sometimes you'll be like, yeah, it's still actually aligned with who I am. And sometimes you'll be like, no, actually, that's going to take me way off track. So this is the other self-introspection part that we all get stuck in, is that subordination to the outer authorities when we get stuck in the comparisons, which we're now calling imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm. So my question is, what practical steps I can take today to start rewriting my own story and scaling with purpose?
Yeah, so definitely that dynamic that I just shared, the athlete example. It's like when you're admiring someone on the outside, right? It's like, where have you displayed and demonstrated this in your own life, right? Even speaking, because not many people are speakers, but the funny thing is, it's because they get stage fright and they're nervous and they're like, I can't do it. I can't talk like you, all this stuff. And I'll ask the question, I'm like, when do you talk like me? When are you able to flow? And what are the conversations that you're talking about? What are the topics? And when we go and look, everyone flows when they're talking about something that's inspiring to them. Everyone can't shut up. Everyone just wants to keep going, keep going. And I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
so if I just put you on podcasts and speaking gigs and all you did was talk about these subjects that you were flowing on, I was like, how would you feel? And they're like, great, I could do that. And I'm like, of course you can do that. So again, the seer, the seeing, and the seen are the same. We want to go in, and if you're ever looking at someone and thinking something's missing inside you, go find it in your own form so you have that confidence and certainty within to go express it on the outside. It'll make your life a lot easier for sure. And then you also know, like when you do get those gigs, those speaking gigs, those events, whatever it may be, even if you get the job or the client where you're in front of someone who you admired before, you'll also have certainty that you're their equal, which means that you'll actually be a more effective and efficient relationship there, right? We won't subordinate to each other, and I'll just show up with my knowledge, with my expertise, and be able to collaborate to a greater degree because I'm not putting you on a pedestal or in a pit. So it's really wisdom to do that process to see where the seer, the seeing, the seen are the same. There's also a great questionnaire I have on my website to kind of understand you uniquely, your life purpose, which kind of helps when you're going through that process. And basically what it is it helps you understand what you value most in the sense of like, what do you actually focus on a day-to-day basis? Like, what does your life demonstrate? I kind of gave you some samples of mine. My life demonstrates I want to focus on my business, my family, and I do focus on health too, for sure. Just not like an athlete. They do a lot more than me. So, but those are the things that I love the most. And I know that that's part of my life purpose. So if I'm going out and I'm comparing myself to someone else, I know to go look in those areas because those are the most important to me on where I'm doing those same things. And so you can use that questionnaire as kind of like another insight to just be like, oh, wow, this is who I am. This is what I love. This is like my mission and my purpose kind of just refined into these dynamics, and make sure you incorporate them every day. These are the things you want to, when I say take those baby steps, take those baby steps in those areas of life daily, and you're going to feel really fulfilled and inspired.
It is very clear, Carly, that you have this fascination with human behavior. How did this fascination evolve into a framework for business growth for you?
Yeah, it's because business, you cannot not grow. Like business is one of being an entrepreneur, having my business, launching the business, I have just had to experience so much growth as a result, just pushing forward fears and working through all the misperceptions that I have. We get personally slighted in business. Like I remember first when I started selling and people weren't buying and how personally offended you get. And now it's like, oh, it just is what it is, right? There's all these things that like go through your head. It's the wildest ride. And so as I started to work through it, I started to learn more and more about the difference of like the mindset and human behavior component. And then I started to attract more clients that were entrepreneurs. And then all of a sudden, it's like we're working at different levels. And then I started to attract like bigger business owners, and it started to just flow into the mindset component within business business. And then at a certain point, I just remember thinking I would love to have more of the strategy side as well for these business owners. So I started putting together the programs and stuff. So we didn't just have the mindset, but we also had the strategy dynamic. So it's like, let's work on the mindset and let's take strategic action as well alongside it so that we're basically tackling all sides of the equation when we think about our business, our life, our health, and our wealth, which is really fun. And it's really important. To me, it's one of the most important things because the business owner, for them to have and run the business the way that not only they would feel fulfilled, but like we have customers who get to feel fulfilled, we have employees who get to feel fulfilled, and we're working on creating fulfillment at different scales. Like it's really important for them to know who they are, know what they're doing, and be clear on how they're implementing that within the structure of their company. So there's a huge level of personal development and understanding yourself, and then being able to share that vision with others, right? Being able to share that visions with others and then show up as that leader. It's a huge part. So it's a really beautiful dynamic to not just have the inside, but also the outside, where we combine the outside and the inside together.
A very interesting story of combining the internal and the external, because a lot of what we do externally certainly stems from what's happening within. So fantastic. At this point, Carly, we are going to go into our community connection segment. So let's move right in. Of course, this is where we connect with you, our community of peak performers. And we have been sharing over the last couple of weeks because they're really big stuff, right? So you know that in October, we're having LeaderCast Kingston. Yes, LeaderCast Kingston has returned after a brief hiatus stemming from the COVID-19 pandemic. But here we are again, ready to have you dive into transformative leadership experience right here in Jamaica. And in November, of course, we're continuing with an adventure. We're going on the Leadership Cruise aboard Royal Caribbean's Liberty of the Seas. So you're going to be learning, collaborating, and recharging with top leaders while sailing to the beautiful island of the Bahamas, right? So that's an experience you don't want to miss. And if you want to be a part of any of these experiences or to share your story with the Entrepreneurial You, please email Heneka at henekawatkisporter.com or WhatsApp 876-849-2571. Indeed, your voice matters. I am back with Carly Pepin. Carly, I would like you to, in addition to all the amazing nuggets you shared before, just take it home as we focus on the topic, rewrite your story, human behavior as a key to leadership and growth.
Yeah, so definitely when we think about this, it's understanding who you are as a leader. And when we do that, it's the self-reflection, clearing our own doubts, misperceptions about ourselves so that you really give yourself permission to not go out there and be what you think you should be, because people are not drawn to that. We are drawn to authenticity. We are magnetized to authenticity. So doing kind of some of this work that we talked about today, it gives you permission to go out there and be yourself, to face the challenges that come with being ourselves, but also that authenticity. It really is a magnet to others, and we get to lead by example, and you'll be surprised on how it gives you permission to show up in the most perfect and the most inspiring way for the people that you're also leading as well.
Absolutely. And what better way to end? So I know that you have whet our appetites, or community of peak performers know, well, they want to know more of how it is that they can get in touch with you, because you have shared exciting nuggets and they want more.
Yeah, definitely head over to my website with its westcoastgrowthadvisors.com. Yeah, and you can connect with me directly there as well.
Okay. Is there any final piece of advice, though, that you want to share with our community? Because, yes, please do share.
Yeah, every person out there is already a leader. You're a leader at a certain scale. And when we think about stepping into leadership, it's actually just expanding leadership, because everyone has led at whatever scale that currently exists in their world. So all we're talking about now is expanding where you're already at. Don't forget that you've already been a leader to a certain degree. Never forget that. Don't disown that part of yourself and see where it is. And then remember, like right now, you're just expanding on that to a greater degree. And you get to do it your way. You get to do it authentically. And yeah, that's inspiring. Everyone has it in them.
Awesome. Everyone has it in them. All right. Thank you so much, Carly Pepin, for coming on and giving us your amazing insights and allowing us to be better today than we were yesterday. So we're now going into trending now. And in 2025, the most successful leaders aren't just mastering technology, right? They're mastering human connection and mindset as well. According to DDI's 2025 leadership trends, forging genuine relationships and building trust are now the top predictors of resilient, innovative teams. Meanwhile, research shows that 87% of high-performing leaders actively work to reframe negative self-talk and perceived flaws into strengths. Companies that invest in behavioral science and mindset training are seeing up to 31% boost in engagement and innovation. The game changer, trust me, leaders who prioritize empathy, inclusion, and collaboration are outpacing those who stick to old school command and control. In a world shaped by rapid changes, it is not just about scaling your business, it's about scaling your self-awareness and rewriting the story you tell yourself and your team. And certainly that's what's trending now. Oh, Carly, like I said before, I'm truly grateful. Thank you for coming on and sharing with me and my community of peak performers on the topic of rewriting your story, human behavior as the key to leadership and growth. So thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was inspiring.
Absolutely. And to you, my community, to learn more about Carly's work or to book her for your next event, of course, I want you to definitely reach out to her on social media or her website as well, westcoastgrowthadvisors.com. And you're there on social media. She's there on social media. She has a giveaway, westcoastgrowthadvisors.com/podcast-gifts. And you see that in the show notes, so don't worry about remembering all of it, right? If this episode sparked a shift in your thinking, please subscribe, leave a rate, review, and share it with somebody ready to rewrite their story. Remember, your narrative is your superpower. Choose it wisely. And I ask you to affirm with me. I am the author of my story, and I choose growth, fulfillment, and authentic leadership. A very big thank you to our sponsors, the Jamaica Stock Exchange and Heneka Watkis-Porter.com. Do take care.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.